Good morning. The broadcast day is December 21st, 2013. My name's Steve McDonald, and I am here in the CNHT studio in Concord, New Hampshire with my co-hosts, Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. We'd like to welcome everyone to another edition of GrokTALK, with special thanks to our Democrat trackers for expanding our reach. The story we're going to get into in more detail in just a few minutes. First, I'd like to welcome the listeners of Cream City Radio, which is operated out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to our GrokTALK show, our program here. Starting today, December 21st, 2013, GrokTALK will be rebroadcast every Saturday and Sunday from 3:30 to 5:30 Central Standard Time on creamcityradio.com. I will also be providing some original content for their blog, and we'll be cross-posting some of their content and programming to graniterock.com. Cream City Radio is a product of the hard work and dedication of Mr. Earl Hall, whom we had on our show a few weeks back as a guest, and it features a conservative blog and conservative talk, both live and podcast, from a perspective of color. All of the Cream City Radio bloggers, hosts, and podcasters are black and Hispanic conservatives, sharing the message of self-responsibility, personal liberty, and the advantages of adopting the conservative approach to politics and life. GrokTALK will be their first foray into diversifying that content to include some conservative news junkies and podcasters of the pasty white variety. And we hope we can do the program schedule justice by promoting that message from a New Hampshire perspective. I would also like to remind everyone that they can check out our blog, graniterock.com, and while you're there, take a moment to look near the top. On the right column, there's a big orange box with the words "Get the Daily Grok." Under those words, you can enter your email address, and then every day after that, you'll receive a list of links to all the new content that we've published. You can also access that content along with some bonus material by following us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Granite Rock, one word, then like us, follow us, and by all means, share us and share with us. Moving on to the big news this week. That big news actually stems from our interview with New Hampshire Republican House Rep J.R. Hull last week, which was picked up by some progressive trackers, the nice folks I just gave a shout out to a few moments ago. J.R. was a guest on the program, during which we had a conversation about Senator Scott Brown, who has recently moved to New Hampshire, where he's originally from, to be fair, with potential designs on entering a race against Democrat Gene Shaheen. JR was organizing a rally with a bunch of pro-gun fish and game groups, conservative and libertarian groups, and that was held just this past Thursday, December 19th. A portion of that interview, which we posted in its entirety last Saturday, will also be available on Cream City Radio this week. They will be playing last week's show there this weekend and this week's show there next weekend, and because we're off next weekend, and then after that you'll get programming from them the exact same week that we produce it. I don't have the original audio handy. I was going to play it, but I had some issues with my laptop, and we're making do with some strange things. But Skip was at the rally, and I'm going to turn it over to him because he's going to kind of give us a little timeline of the things that happened after the interview. Certain other organizations, those Democrat trackers I was talking about, began to pick up this story and run with it.
Yes, and again, I want to echo Steve's welcome to the Cream City Radio folks and blog, and we are very fortunate to have been picked up by Earl Hall's organization, and we say thank you very much. We here talk and blog from a conservative libertarian standpoint, and from that standpoint, we did interview J.R. Hull last week, and we were talking about Scott Brown, and one of the reasons why he has become the focus here is not just because of the senatorial race in New Hampshire that'll be coming up next year and trying to unseat Gene Shaheen, but the whole idea of rights, and especially the Second Amendment rights, which a lot of us here in New Hampshire hold to be very, very dear. It is very important. It's not just because one can hold a gun in their hands, but it stands for the unalienable right, or inalienable right, to self-defense, which preceded the start of government. And this is something that Scott Brown has said that he would be in favor of infringing, in direct contradiction to the plain speaking words of the Second Amendment. And we kind of morphed into one of the things that we talk about here is that, what is the general decay of the United States? And at some point, like all cultures in history, things go south, and oftentimes go south in a hurry, which then swings back to the Second Amendment. Well, one of the Democrats trackers that we have.
The ones we were just making fun of last week.
Yes, well, we'll name this week, which is William Tucker from Miscellany Blue. Thank you very much for abstracting a whole 29 seconds out of our pretty much 30-minute interview with JR. He put that out there, and of course the groupthink alike process started because I started seeing links coming into the podcast page, and
Thank you again.
Yes, I think Progress picked it up and did a little bit of a different spin on it. And again, we had talked about Article 10 here in New Hampshire's Constitution, and for background for those folks in Milwaukee, New Hampshire Constitution is very, very strong. In some ways, it's even stronger for personal rights than the U.S. Constitution. We have an article here that a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives just absolutely hate and believe is of no importance whatsoever, but a lot of us who are conservatives who totally accept all of the clauses of the constitutions, both U.S. and New Hampshire, really go down to the heart of the matter, and that's Article 10, where we are actually guaranteed the right to revolution if we end up with an oppressive government. And we'll probably talk about that. You'll hear us talk about it going forward. But that really was where what we were talking about. So anyways, Miscellany Blue decided that J.R. Hole was talking and advocating for armed revolution now. I think Progress picked it up. Then all the subsidiary blue state type of blogs picked that up. And it actually ended up being the headlines morphing to where J.R. Hole wants to shoot Scott Brown, which is absolutely ludicrous because basically all of these other blogs are just literally cutting and pasting from Think Progress. So how you get the morphing of the headlines from what started at Miscellany Blue to killing Scott Brown, I have no clue. Other than somebody's just trying to get some link bait, as we call it in the blogging world, or just eyeballs on page and just saying something outrageous. But it was just strange.
Indeed. And also welcome to our new listeners. And I'm fascinated at what they've done with this. But the right of revolution is important, and it like everything, like charity, revolution begins at home. First, we take our pitchforks and torches to the state Republican Party, then maybe to the state capitol, and if that still doesn't work, maybe to Washington. But we have the right.
I think ultimately we just need people to realize that your right to protect your person is unalienable. It can't be removed from you. You are always allowed to defend your person and your property, which is an expression of your person, because you only accumulate property through legal means by doing legal things that you exchange labor for some kind of payment in return. And that's your stuff. And it's a reflection of your person, and you therefore have a right to defend that stuff. Now, we're not talking about going out and attacking people. We're talking about being able to defend ourselves. And we know, history has shown us, recent history around the world, that when you disarm people, crime goes up.
And not only that, government crime goes up too, where they start finding more and more excuses to take your stuff.
One way or the other.
One way or the other.
So anyways, that started on Saturday, and then this Thursday night, Scott Brown was headlining an NHGOP fundraiser in Nashua, New Hampshire. And because of his stance on the Second Amendment, or his very weak stance, or his contra stance, depending on where you stand on the issue, there were a bunch of folks who decided we're not going to let this go and exercise their First Amendment rights to protest. So across the street from the building where the fundraiser was being held, a group of anywhere from 200 to 300 people gathered, some of them in Hunter Orange, to protest Scott Brown's weak defense, if it can even be called that, of their Second Amendment rights. And in fact, from what I have been told, I could not get inside the hall. No press was allowed at all. But there were probably about 90 to 100 people on the inside of the hall listening to Scott Brown and other speakers. And outside, at one point, I would say about 300 people were gathered in the cold.
I talked to Diane Bitter last night. She said it was 340.
340 outside?
Yeah. total people who attended. They may not have all been there simultaneously, but 340 people showed up for the rally.
Oh, okay. I didn't see Diane.
I don't know how she knew that. She got it from somebody.
Okay.
But I've heard something else from people. Rick Olson, who was obviously the MC, I think he gave me a number like that too.
Well, Pete and Jemmy was actually literally the tech guy, a blogger and radio guy that we're very happy to associate with out of Massachusetts. Literally was going around and doing a head count several times during the rally.
He claims it exceeded 300 at one point.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It was very well attended. A number of speakers. I was able to get a number of interviews, which are now posted up on Granite Grok. So you can, some people of note, some people just regular folks.
And if you want to know, somebody that I work with who drives through there at that hour was a little like, what's going on? The traffic was really bad.
Oh, it was bad, and that's one reason why I missed the start of it. It took me a half hour to drive the 1.5 miles from the getting off the highway into Nashua. Then another 15 minutes trying to get one of the folks to pay attention to me so I could unload the truck for the equipment, and then another 15 minutes to find a parking space. It was horrible. So, but these people were lively, they were vocal, and you know, they had a seriousness of purpose. This was not just a ragtag gaggle of hunters. These folks knew why they were there. They could, I mean, one of the folks that I interviewed, the last one, Steve, in the last post I put up, went right to the Constitution, Article 2A, the right to defend ourselves, which is the New Hampshire Constitution's equivalent of the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. These people are informed, and these people are ticked. I'd use some other words, but you know, I don't know whether this would fall afoul of the FCC regulations, but you know, they're a group of people who are tired of government telling them how to live their lives in what they see to be contraindicative of the constitutions. We read the plain speaking text of the Constitution, and yet we're thrown up with all these laws accumulated like spaghetti code in a program that muddle the main purpose of what it was that you were writing in the first place.
And we all know, well, several of us know about what happens when spaghetti code gets added on to what was originally a clean idea.
Yes, our New Hampshire folks, by the way, understand that most of us are techies in the computer industry one way or the other. I happen to be a software engineer, so we bring that up. So just to give you, you know, spaghetti code, if you in Milwaukee are going, spaghetti code? Yeah, we're programmers, so.
It just means horribly badly written and much more complicated than it needs to be, which defines absolutely the Affordable Care Act and everything else which government has thrown up lately. The original founding documents were exceedingly short. The original, not that it's any better, British National Health Care Act ran 47 pages of standard letter or 94 pages of basically postcard-sized pamphlet paper. Compare that to 2,000 double-sided sheets of absolute garbage. And this is the kind of stuff that we have to overturn. That doesn't necessarily mean violent revolution, but we have to roll back this government or it'll strangle us. And those are the things. Governments were instituted amongst men to protect our rights.
Okay, before we continue, I just want to let everybody know that our first guest at 9:30 will be Rep. Leon Rideout, who comes to us from the North Country via the beautiful invention of telephone. And in the second segment, Kevin Kervick will be back, a one-time candidate for House Rep and a very smart gentleman who we're going to let talk in access because he's got a lot of cool things to say as I look at Skip. And
I'm going to grovel a second time this morning.
Because that never mind. Anyway. And then in the third segment, I'm not even sure who our guest is just yet because we had one and then we had another one and I don't know who's going to be here, but we're going to have something going on in the final segment of the show, and we are going to do our best to make sure that it's relevant and entertaining and provocative. It's provocative.
Well, now let me give. We did a lot of talking about the rally. Now let me give you the flip side of it that I think is very disconcerting to a lot of people. I'm not sure how it is in Wisconsin. Intimately associated, although you know we all watched from afar the Scott Walker type stuff and the big labor versus the laws and the right to work and all of that other stuff, which I noticed. You know, there's been a lot of runaway
legislators.
Yes, I think now it's up to 70 unions that have been decertified, where the union members basically said, we don't want you anymore. So it shows you what freedom, true freedom of choice, can do.
And I read that piece as well, Skip, and what was really interesting about it, the law says that the unions must be recertified by a 50% vote of the members, not a 50% vote of all employees of that business, but 50% of the members. So that means that more than half of the union members of some of these branches didn't want to be members anymore. That's serious.
Yeah, and it shows that the value proposition, what am I getting for my dues money from the union, was a whole lot less than what the union leadership thought it was.
And dues, I got to be honest with you, because I was a Teamster for almost 10 years, and I know everybody that we know is in one way or another come in contact with a union of some sort.
Not me.
Not either.
Never been in a
You
union.
never come in contact with one now?
Oh yeah, when I first started working.
Okay, so
I failed my first job interview when I made it completely clear that I couldn't stand unions, and then got told, but sir, this is a union shop.
well, the quite often the dues are not that big a deal. It's money out of your pocket, absolutely, but it is the value proposition. It isn't just that they take $30 out of your check every month. It's what they do with it. Everybody knows what they do with it.
Yeah.
The history of union abuse is pretty extensive, and things have gotten better, but they still use it to finance the Democrat Party. 90% of that money goes to Democrats, and not just from donations specifically for that purpose. As the Department of Labor revealed a couple years ago, between 2006 and 2012, there was something like $6 billion spent on Democrats. The unions spent it on Democrats. So people, more than 50%, are saying, we don't want that.
No, and absolutely right. And there were laws passed a few years ago that said they couldn't spend your money on political causes without your permission, or that they had to basically refund or not take that portion. And the unions just ignored all of that, and various Democrat regulators and legislations let them get away with it. But here's the point I wanted to make. Way back when, if union members went on strike, they were on strike. It was voluntary. They didn't get to collect unemployment in Britain or here. And as a result of it being a voluntary choice to strike, what the union dues did was they created a strike fund. In other words, it wasn't the taxpayer that paid you for the privilege of holding your employer ransom. It was the union that you had joined, you had voted with, that you had chosen to pick that fight, and you picked that fight with the calculation that you'd set aside some rainy day money for that possibility. Now the taxpayer pays you while you're on strike through various forms of assistance, and the union gets to spend the money on political works. That's just not right. Let's close them down.
Yeah. And you have our new Milwaukee listeners have just heard our version of squirrels, which means we went from one topic to another without necessarily meaning to. My whole purpose was to actually talk about the ramifications of the rally and what's going on with the civil war within the GOP, which is, and we'll hear more from the tech guy later on about this, is that with everything else that's been going on in D.C. with the Republicans, not necessarily following the platform or what the grassroots would have them do. We're seeing that writ small here in New Hampshire, where it looks like the NHGOP wants to bless Scott Brown to run for Senate with his values that run contra to the grassroots, which means that a lot of people are going to get just plain disgusted and not vote and not show up to vote, which is not only going to hurt Scott Brown or the NHGOP's chance to kick Gene Shaheen out of office, which is basically the major purpose, but if a lot of people, a lot of conservatives who see the GOP going its own way, they're not going to show up, and everything down ticket from there is going to go astray. And we've been watching this process. 2010 was a big election cycle here in New Hampshire, where we basically pushed all the Democrats out except for the governor's office, supermajorities in both the Senate and the House, and I could see that completely disappear at this point in the next election, because people are going to say, once again, dime's worth of difference between the two. I can't see it. And in a lot of cases, if you've got Scott Brown, who is for firearms bans, who voted in favor of Dodd-Frank, who is pro-choice. It's like junior partners of the Democrat Party. You know, where does he differ from Gene Jaheen?
Junior partner.
Junior partner.
Junior.
Well,
Senior.
well, no. Basically, it's part of the rule. They're happy to be the junior partners of the ruling class. Let's put it that way. They're along for the ride.
They're along for the ride, the money, the power, the fact that everybody who goes to Washington intending to do good does well instead, and that's the ones that are even honest about going there to do good. Some of them just do go there to do well. But, you know, we ought to compare Scott Brown 2010 with Scott Brown 2014 as well. After all, what happened to the guy in the pickup truck and the one that got the gun-toting Democrats of Massachusetts, there are a few, so riled up that they were willing to vote for him rather than Martha Coakley. And I was out there, I walked the streets. You go to what would be considered redneck neighborhoods, you know, perfectly respectable suburbs of not expensive but owner-occupied houses. These are, you know, the middle-class working folks, and you knock on the door and they say yes, and all my Democrat buddies too. And that happened in 2010, and the exact opposite happened in 2012, because by then they knew who he was. So, you know, Scott Brown in his pickup truck looks about as fake as John Huntsman in his plaid shirts.
Yes, I saw those plaid shirts too. But that's another story for another time.
Still had wrinkles from the package.
Yeah, but you're right.
It was dressing the daughters in the same outfit that made it a little ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think all of us here at GrokTALK, because we are New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site, we stand firm on our beliefs and our principles. And I know that if any one of us decided to run for elective office, that's just going to be who you are. It's like Al Baldessaro, New Hampshire State Rep, who announced Thursday night that he may well be seeking the U.S. Senate seat himself. And I can tell you, I don't think anybody's going to change him. If he were to win and go down to D.C., it'd be a lot of fun just to watch him.
You know, that would be...
He is a character up here.
That's not Mr. Smith going to Washington. That's the Godfather going to Washington.
Yeah, he is a 22-year prior Marine, very set in his way, has a very brusque manner of speaking. But
He's direct.
He is direct. He can get in your face. He doesn't care if he's surrounded by Republicans or surrounded by Democrats. He's going to say the same thing no matter who you are. You know what his stances are, and he's not going to vary. I almost wrote that his feet are wedded to the granite of the Granite State, except I knew that somebody would make fun of that line one way or the other. But in essence, that's really who he is. His ideas are solidly conservative, and you're not going to make him budge. And I think it would be a hoot to send, if he were to run, to send that conservative down to D.C. would be it would be a hoot. Like I said in the last line of my post, I couldn't wait for the first time that Al Baldessaro met up with Harry Reid.
It'll be interesting. Whatever happens. We're getting to the end of the segment, and we're going to come back with Leon Rideout shortly. Just to remind you again to check us out on Facebook and to also check us out on Twitter. Just look at Granite Rock and you'll find us.
And to tease the upcoming attraction of Pete, the tech guy, the thing that worries him is we run a whole bunch of conservatives versus one Scott Brown, and he splits the vote and wins.
Well, that's what always happens.
We have to prevent that. Let's pick a conservative.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeehaw.
Maybe we will.
Gladiator time.
But not yet. We will be right back. This is GrokTALK.
Okay.
Sorry, little extra attack of squirrels this morning.
Okay, where's the addition button for line 1? Thank you. I like that feature. That's a cool feature.
Steve's becoming the maestro of the board.
Yeah, you need to take this and get it FTP'd up, and I can write the post, but I won't be able to put the audio in. So.
I can. Okay. I'm reading this going, I'm not quite sure I understand. Three. Hello, Leon. This is Skip Murphy from Granite Rock and GrokTALK. I am doing well, and yourself? Good. We just finished our first segment. We're doing a little bit of an interlude here before we bring you on. So can you hold on a couple minutes and then Steve will introduce you. Okay, hold on and listen to the music.
Most cool.
I still can't believe I missed it. I really can't.
You missed a hell of a show. Isn't the guy better than a one-man band? I mean,
Oh, it's nice. Yeah. Good show.
26 characters,
Oh,
one man,
wow.
ranging far and wide amongst the across the stage and amongst the audience.
That's a lot of memorization. A lot of memorization.
Yeah, well, he's been doing it for a while. He got persuaded to
20
do a
years
reading.
he's been doing it.
He
yeah.
got persuaded to do a reading for charity in 1993, and he hated the idea. And then he studied for the part and decided he liked it, and then he got into it and evolved into the act that we see now. And Fortune and Gage, the florists in Nashua, have been bringing him to this location for 5 years now. I think Mama's been bought in for about 4 of them. Dinner, reserved seats.
Crapola.
Like I said, you can deal with the ladies. I'll just make fun of the situation.
I deserve all the opprobrium that is sent my way.
Only off by a minute. So the first segment's going to be about a minute short.
Oh, I don't think that's a big deal.
It's going to be a big gap. It's a Christmas song, I promise. Wait for it.
GrokTV.